Where did you come from? Oh, God, the blood. What am I supposed to do? Don't cry. It's just you and me now, isn't it? Hush now, don't you fret. Mama's here. We just need to be very quiet. Please don't cry.
I reckon you understand the consequences if you don't vacate this property by sundown, ma'am.
The widow stood in the dirt behind the barn with her hands shaking so bad she had to press them together. The baby cried like it had no breath left to spare. The sound cut through her head and settled in her chest. "Don't," she whispered, voice breaking. "Don't cry. Please." The baby did not listen. It kicked and cried harder, red-faced, fists tight. She looked around like someone might answer for it, but the land stayed still. She saw the wagon then, parked wrong near the fence. Old wood, one wheel sunk low. She had not heard it come. She had not heard it leave. The bundle sat in the bed, wrapped tight and breathing. The crying came from there. "No," she said, not loud. No, she stepped closer anyway, boots dragging. She leaned over the side and saw the baby's face, wet and furious, alive. A folded paper rested on its chest. She picked up the note first. Her fingers fumbled. She read it once. Her mouth went dry. She dropped it. The baby cried and kicked. She picked the paper back up, slower this time. She read it again. Her knees bent but did not give. "I can't," she said out loud. "I can't do this." The barn did not answer. The well did not answer. The baby screamed like it knew her name. The paper shook in her hand. The words were blunt. They named blood. They named a man she had buried. They said the child was owed. They said take him. They said if she did not, someone else would. "You got the wrong woman," she told the paper. "You don't know me." The baby reached out and caught her finger, grip strong, skin warm. She froze. "Don't," she said. "Don't do that." The baby kept crying, breath hitching, fingers locked. She looked toward the road beyond the fence. Dust lay flat. No tracks going out. Only coming in. She felt chosen like a mark. "Why me?" she asked nobody. "Why here?" The baby answered with a thin wail that cut off sharp. She lifted him without thinking, arms clumsy. He was lighter than grief, heavier than fear. He smelled like milk and dust. "I don't know you," she said to his head. "You don't belong here." The baby cried against her chest. She held him tighter. The crying slowed, then surged. "Stop," she said. "Please stop." She pressed her face to his blanket. Her eyes burned. "I buried my dead," she said. "I paid already." The baby quieted for a breath, then cried again, softer. She rocked once. Then again. "Don't make me choose," she whispered. She read the note a third time, forcing each word. It spoke of guilt like a fact. It spoke of inheritance like a threat. It said the child was proof. It said she would know what to do. "No, I won't," she said. "I won't know." The baby's hand found her skin again. He squeezed. She felt it through bone. "You don't know me," she told him. "You don't know what I lost." The baby's crying cracked and fell into a weak sob. She glanced back at the barn door, half open, dark inside. The house stood beyond, windows blind. The well waited between, mouth black. She imagined leaving the baby in the wagon. She imagined walking away. Her feet did not move. "I can't," she said again, but it sounded different now. The baby hiccuped, then went quiet for a breath that scared her. "No," she said fast. "No, no." He cried again, alive, stubborn. She tucked the note into her pocket like a sin. "This isn't mine," she said to the air. "None of this is." She looked down the road once more. Still nothing. She shifted the baby higher. He calmed some, breath shuddering. "You're heavy," she told him. "You hear me." The baby made a small sound, not a cry. It undid her. Footsteps crunched behind the barn, slow, close. She turned, heart pounding, baby tight to her chest, as the sound kept coming. She spun around, the baby pressing into her chest. A man stood there, boots scuffed, badge glinting in the low sun. Not the sheriff, just a deputy. Too calm. Too easy. "Morning," he said. His voice was flat. "Morning," she replied, wary. "You trespassing?" he asked, hands resting near his belt. "Someone left a child," she said, shaking. She did not add more. He looked past her, toward the wagon. His face tightened. "You didn't see nothing," he said, tone warning. "I saw a baby," she said. "That's not what I mean," he said, slow. One hand went to the badge, lingering. "Sheriff don't like surprises," he said, eyes sharp. "Neither do I," she shot back, chest rising. The baby whimpered between them. The deputy noticed the note sticking from her pocket. He leaned slightly, fingers brushing the edge. "What's that?" he asked. "Mine," she said, voice quiet, protective. He paused, watching her. "You a widow, right?" he asked, eyes scanning her face. She did not answer. Silence stretched, tense. "Figures," he said finally. Then he stepped back, not filing anything, not promising safety. She held the baby closer. His little fists curled, tapping her shoulder. "Shoo," she whispered. "It's all right." The deputy's shadow lingered a moment longer. He left without looking back, boots crunching over the dirt road. Dust rose, settling in the silence. The wagon sat empty except for the child. She tucked the note fully inside her coat, fingers gripping tight. The wind shifted. She could hear distant men in the valley, horses clattering. Her stomach knotted. "Don't you start," she murmured to the baby. He hiccuped, then cried softly. She rocked him once, then again, careful not to shake too hard. "It's just us," she said, tone brittle. "It's just us now." The house waited beyond the fence, still and uninviting. She passed the well, peering into the black water, seeing nothing, feeling everything. The baby's breath warmed her chest, quick and erratic. She murmured promises she did not feel yet. "I'll figure it out," she said. "I'll figure it out." Inside, the floorboards creaked under her weight. She laid the baby against her shoulder, blanket shifting around him. "Quiet now," she said, pressing the paper into her palm again. She read it silently. The words seemed sharper here, in the closed air of the house. She felt the weight of them heavier than when she first held them. Outside, the sun climbed, lighting dust motes like sparks. She pressed the baby's head to her chest. "Sleep," she said. The baby's fists loosened. A small sigh. Eyelids fluttering. Slowly, finally, he gave in to the rhythm of her arms. She swayed back and forth, rocking in the shadow of the kitchen wall. The deputy's warning hung in her ears. No one would come to help. No one would stand for her or the child. Silence was safer. Action was dangerous. She could feel it in her bones. "Don't call him," she whispered. "No sheriff. No questions. No promises." The baby murmured against her chest, small, trusting, alive. She pressed her cheek to his hair, smelling faint milk and earth. "We're alone," she said. "I'm alone. We're alone together." Outside, a crow called, shrill. Dust blew in through the window cracks. She shivered, not from cold. From knowing the world outside had rules she could not fight, that power was patient and slow. The baby's breathing slowed, small chest rising and falling. She closed her eyes, memorizing that fragile quiet. Her hands traced his tiny back. She hummed low, a tune she did not know. Outside, the wind whispered through dry grass, through the barn, past the wagon. No one came. No one interfered. For now. She tightened her coat around the note, around the baby, around herself. "Stay asleep," she said softly. "Stay safe." The house settled, groaning under its own age. Dust shifted. The wind moved again. A door creaked, then quiet. She looked at the child, finally letting herself breathe. He was hers to protect. For now. And for the first time, in the morning light, she allowed herself to hope that he might stay asleep just a little longer. Inside the house, she sat at the kitchen table, the baby in her lap, the note spread before her like a wound. She traced the words with trembling fingers, reading them over and over. The name stared back, familiar and unbearable. A man long buried. A family whose shadows still ruled this land. A sin everyone pretended not to see. "No," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "No, no, no." The baby shifted, tiny hands brushing her arm. She felt the pulse of life, the proof of what had been hidden. Memories came unbidden. Her husband's voice in the doorway, calm, patient. "They own this land," he had said once. She remembered the weight behind it. "Then why do we live on it?" she had asked. Silence had answered. The paper trembled in her hands. She realized the baby was more than a child. He was evidence. A living claim no one could ignore. Her chest tightened. "You don't know this world yet," she murmured to him. "You're the proof of everything they denied." A knock rattled the doorframe. She froze. The baby stirred, eyes blinking up at her. "You alone in there?" asked a voice, sharp and steady. She stood slowly, holding the baby closer. An old midwife leaned on the threshold, shadowed by the morning light. "Word travels," the woman said. "I didn't speak," the widow said, tense. "You didn't have to," the midwife replied, stepping inside. She glanced at the baby, eyes calculating, measuring. "That child will make men nervous," she said. The widow tightened her arms. "He's just a baby," she said. "That's the problem," the midwife said. The widow sat back at the table, the baby cooing softly against her chest. She read the note again. Every line cut deeper. Dates, names, hints of betrayal long buried. Each word carried the weight of secrets that should have died with the men who hid them. "No one can know," she muttered. She fingered the edges of the paper, burned the envelope but kept the note safe, fragile, like a talisman. Memories surfaced in fragments. Conversations with her husband, hushed and heavy with warning. "Never trust the land," he had said. "It keeps receipts." The widow felt the truth now. The land had remembered. The child had brought it all back. She pressed the baby closer. "You're safe for now," she whispered. "But not for long." The midwife watched quietly. She did not speak. The silence was heavy, full of understanding. The widow realized she would have to decide what to do. This child was hers, but he carried a past that would not stay buried. The name on the paper was more than a clue. It was a declaration. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, stirring dry leaves. The widow looked down at the baby, small and helpless, and felt the enormity of what had landed in her arms. He was proof, witness, and target all at once. Her life had changed forever. The midwife finally broke the silence. "This land doesn't forgive," she said. "And it doesn't forget. That child, he will make them nervous." The widow nodded, understanding the truth in that statement. She had already seen the first shadows of trouble in the deputy's face, the way the paper had changed everything. She fingered the note again, holding it against her chest. Fire would take the envelope. The note would remain. A fragile link between past and present. She imagined the men who would come, the questions they would ask. She imagined the danger pressing closer. But she also imagined the baby, warm and breathing, unaware of the politics and sins surrounding him. The widow's hands tightened around him. "We'll face them together," she said softly. "And if they come, they'll see me first." The baby cooed. She breathed in the soft scent of him and felt a fierce, protective heat in her chest. The midwife nodded, approving without words. The sun climbed higher, casting the house in sharp light. Dust motes floated in the beams. The widow burned the envelope in the small hearth, watching it curl and blacken, ashes scattering across the floor. But the note remained in her hand, folded carefully, soaked in the weight of names and promises, proof of what could not be ignored. She held the baby, heart racing, mind spinning. The past had come to her doorstep. And for the first time, she felt the future pressing against her ribs. She would not run. She would not hide. The baby was hers. The note had chosen her. She had chosen him. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of the world beyond the house, of roads, of men, of power and inheritance. The widow held the baby tight, eyes sharp, aware that every second now counted. The midwife's presence was steady, a reminder that even in secrecy, guidance could be found. And as she looked down at the tiny, fragile life in her arms, she understood. This was not just a child. He was history, danger, and hope intertwined. The name on the paper was a chain, and she would carry it, just as she would carry him. The widow sat on the edge of the bed, baby in her arms, staring at the small bundle like it might dissolve if she blinked. "I don't know how," she said, voice tight, almost a whisper. The baby's mouth opened wide, wailing, fists flailing. She rocked him, tried, failed. "I can't," she admitted, chest tightening. Tears burned her eyes. The midwife stepped into the room, arms folded, eyes steady. "You keep him?" she asked, blunt. "I don't know," the widow said. She shifted the baby, trying to quiet him. The midwife nodded, as if that answered everything. "You already are," she said. No comfort in her tone. Only truth. The widow flinched. Outside, horses passed down the road, riding fast, men counting, eyes sharp. "They counting windows," the midwife muttered, voice low. Dust whipped across the porch. The widow glanced at the small slits of glass, realizing each reflected their presence, their vulnerability. She hugged the baby tighter. "You hear that?" she whispered. "They're watching. Always watching." The baby's cry slowed, then surged again. She pressed a cloth to his mouth, small, gentle, useless. "Shoo, don't," she pleaded. The midwife stepped closer, guiding her hands. "Feed him," she said. "Do it right." The widow's hands trembled, fumbling with bottle and cloth. The baby screamed, sharp and relentless. She gasped. "I don't know how," she said again. The midwife's eyes did not soften. She leaned over, firm. "Then learn," she said. "Fast." The widow swallowed. Her fingers, sticky with milk, pressed into the baby's tiny back. He arched, pulled, wailing, blood and milk and dust mixing in the small kitchen air. She breathed through it. She held him closer. At night, the sound of hooves broke the quiet. Men riding past the house, slow now, measuring, counting. "They smell fear," the midwife said. "They smell it in you, not him. Keep calm." The widow nodded, heart racing. She pressed the baby against her chest, skin to skin, warmth to warmth. He calmed slightly, but his breath was still uneven, life still raw and sharp. She gave him a name, softly, barely audible. Eli, she whispered, as if the sound might vanish if spoken louder. Don't answer to it, she added, eyes scanning the darkened room. Eli's tiny hand brushed her chin. She froze. Not yet, she said. His small fingers curled and let go. She sighed, exhausted, heart pounding. The midwife watched silently as the widow swayed, rocking the baby, whispering small fragments of comfort. He'll make them nervous, she said again. And you'll make them scared. The widow nodded, not daring to speak more. The night pressed in, silent but alive with the sound of hidden threats. A soft noise came from outside the well. A faint clink, like something dropped. The widow stiffened. Who's there? She whispered, voice low. The midwife looked toward the door, then the window, calculating. No one, she said. It's the land. It remembers everything. The widow's grip tightened on Eli. She pressed him against her, breathing in his scent, milk and sweat and small warmth. The wind shifted, rattling the shutters. Shadows moved across the floor. She rocked the baby, humming a tune she didn't know, letting him feel her heartbeat, letting him know she was present. Each movement was deliberate, protective, defiant. The noise from the well was gone, leaving his silence heavy with warning. Eli blinked up at her, wide-eyed, tiny fists opening and closing. The widow pressed her cheek to his head. We survived tonight, she said. We survived this. They don't get you. Not now. Not ever. Outside, the world held its breath. Dust settled over the porch. Horses moved past. The horizon waited, empty, watching. Hours passed. The baby's cries became intermittent. The midwife leaned against the wall, silent but unyielding, a reminder that instruction could be firm without comfort. He's alive, the midwife said finally. And so are you. The widow nodded, though neither had slept. The house smelled of milk, sweat, dust, and fear. By morning, Eli had finally quieted, small chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. The widow held him against her, whispering his name. She traced his tiny fingers with her own, marveling at the life pressed into her arms. We keep moving, she whispered. We keep hidden. And you stay alive. She glanced toward the well again, black and silent. Something had fallen there, something unseen, something waiting. She felt the weight of it, the memory in the dirt, in the water. But she would not leave Eli. Not for the world. Not for anyone. She held him, warm and alive, against the shadow of what waited outside. A black car came down the dirt road, clean, polished, wrung in the dust and wind. It stopped too close to the house. The engine ticked down, quiet but full of intent. The widow held Eli tighter, his small head pressed to her chest. She watched the door open. A man stepped out, suit sharp, smile too fast, eyes calculating. Ma'am, he said, polite, wrong. You're lost, she said, voice guarded. No, I'm not, he said, steps measured, eyes on the baby. He looked at her like she was a problem to solve. She shifted Eli in her arms, protective. That baby ain't yours, he said, voice soft, deliberate. She lifted her chin. He's breathing in my house, she said. The man's smile faltered slightly. We can make this easy, he said, tone smooth. We can make it right. She laughed bitter, sharp. You already made it hard, she said. Eli stirred, tiny fists opening, reaching. The man's gaze caught on the baby, eyes widening just slightly. He's got his eyes, he said, too quiet to be casual. The words hit her harder than anything else. Something in the line, in the tone. She felt the weight of the name, the note, the inheritance. Her hands tightened around Eli. Get off my land, she said, voice low but firm. The baby whimpered, sensing the tension, but did not cry. The man's smile returned, forced. I'll return, he said, voice smooth as glass. With paperwork. He stepped back toward the car, eyes lingering on Eli. The engine purred, dust swirling around the wheels. She stood frozen for a moment, the baby in her arms, heart hammering. She watched until the car disappeared into the horizon, leaving the air tense and heavy. Eli's small body pressed into her chest. "You hear that?" she whispered. "They think they own you. They think they can take you." His breathing was steady now, fragile and soft against her. She swayed slightly, rocking him. "Not today. Not ever," she said. Outside, the wind picked up dust, scattering it across the porch. The note burned quietly in her pocket. She had read it again and again, each word sharper, more dangerous. Names. Dates. Ownership. Bloodlines. All pressing against her ribs. The governor's son, the name she had feared, had just confirmed the reality she could no longer deny. Eli was leverage, proof, a living claim. And now, he knew it. She whispered to the baby, voice low and rough. "They think this changes everything. But they don't see us. Not yet. They don't see me." He pressed his small head to her shoulder, tiny fingers curling around the fabric. She kissed the crown of his hair. "You're mine," she said. "I chose you. They don't get to choose." The midwife appeared at the window, shadowed by morning light. "They'll be back," she said simply. "Always." The widow nodded. "We'll be ready," she replied, eyes sharp, scanning the horizon. The wind moved through the dry grass like whispers. She could feel it, heavy with expectation, with threat. Footsteps approached, careful, deliberate. Dust swirled. The memory of the black car lingered. She pressed Eli closer, whispering his name. "Stay quiet," she said. "Stay alive." His tiny hands gripped hers. She stared at the road, imagining him in the hands of the men who thought power was theirs to wield. She swallowed hard. The sound of the car had faded, leaving the road empty, silent, but the danger lingered. She set Eli down gently, covering him with a small blanket. "We're not giving up," she said. "Not now. Not ever." Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling shutters, stirring the dust, reminding her that this land remembered everything. The governor's son had promised to return. She knew it, felt it in the bones of the house, in the weight of the note, in the pull of inheritance and guilt and power. She could wait, she could hide, but she could not stop the future from pressing closer. Eli cooed softly, tiny breath warm against her chest. She kissed his head again, feeling the fragile pulse of life she would protect at all costs. The land around them was quiet, holding its secrets, waiting. And she knew one thing for certain, she would not hand him over. Not to them. Not to anyone. The widow woke to laughter. High, empty, too sharp for the small room. Eli sat in the crib, tiny fists clenching, eyes bright. "Who you talking to?" she asked, breath heavy, heart hammering. The sound echoed against the walls. Nothing moved except him, swaying slightly, amused at something she could not see. The midwife appeared at the door, leaning on the frame. "Other women," she said, voice low, steady. "What women?" the widow asked, cautious, tense. "The ones who didn't get to keep theirs," the midwife said. She did not step further, just watched. The widow's stomach tightened. Shadows clung to the corners. The widow picked up Eli, feeling the small weight of him, his warmth, his fragile breath. "Don't speak to them," she whispered. "Not yet. Not ever." He blinked up at her, curious, unafraid. Outside, wind stirred the dry grass, carrying whispers she could not place. The midwife moved toward the well, silent, deliberate. "Look," she said. "See what remembers." The well yawned dark and deep, black water swallowing the faint light. The widow leaned over, heart hammering, stomach tight. She could see nothing. Only the reflection of her own face, pale and anxious, the outline of Eli's tiny head pressing against her shoulder. "This place eats secrets," the midwife said, voice low but absolute. A faint echo rose from the water, high, thin. Eli's laughter stopped abruptly. He froze, fingers gripping her coat. She pulled him back, closer, chest against chest. did you hear that?" she whispered. The midwife nodded. "They're listening," she said. "The land, the ones who lost theirs. It all stays here." The widow's fingers trembled as she pulled the note from her pocket. Names, sins, dates, all soaked in danger, in history, in blood. She looked into the well again. The water rippled, black and unyielding. She lowered the note carefully into the well. It sank slowly, soaked, edges curling, darkened but intact. She pulled it back up. Wet, heavy, permanent. "This land doesn't forgive," the midwife said. "And it doesn't forget." The widow held the note close, pressing it to her chest. Eli stirred, tiny fingers brushing her chin, looking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. She rocked him slowly, whispering his name. "You stay alive," she said softly. "You stay quiet. You stay mine." Outside, the wind moaned through the trees. The well seemed to sigh back. The echo of lost children, lost mothers, lingered in the air, heavy and silent. The widow shivered. She pressed Eli closer, his small body trembling slightly. "We're not leaving," she whispered. "We stay. We survive." The midwife remained at the edge of the well, quiet, steady. She had seen too many babies like this vanish into darkness, into claims they could not escape. She did not speak further. The widow knew she would need the guidance, even as the danger pressed closer. The baby cooed again, a soft, fragile sound. The widow smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling. The note was wet, but it remained in her hands, proof, warning, inheritance. The well had claimed nothing yet, but its memory was alive, hungry, patient. She tucked the paper into her coat, pressing it flat against her chest. Eli shifted, small fists unclenching, breath steadying. The widow's heart eased, if only a little. She whispered his name again, soft, almost a secret. Outside, the land stretched dry and silent, waiting, remembering. She knew men would come. She knew power would arrive, slow, certain, merciless. But she held him close. For now, he was safe. She touched the well's edge, dark and cold under her fingers. "We survived together," she said, voice quiet but firm. The baby's breath pressed against her chest, fragile but alive. The land waited. The echoes lingered. The note remained, heavy and wet, a tether between past and present. And she understood, finally, fully. This land would never forget. It would hold their secrets, demand their patience, measure their courage. But for now, Eli was safe. For now, the widow had the child. And she would not let go. The sheriff came at dawn. Old, tired, shoulders slumped, boots scuffed from years on this land. He did not knock. He stepped over the threshold, eyes heavy, watching. "You caused trouble," he said, voice low, gravelly. The widow clutched Eli to her chest. "It found me," she said, voice tight, defensive. He looked at the baby, small and alive in her arms. His hands trembled slightly, old age or guilt, she could not tell. "That child don't belong to the living," he said. She froze. "He belongs to me," she said, tone sharp, protective. The sheriff's face softened, almost a hint of sorrow. He moved closer, slow, careful. "They'll kill you," he said, low. The words were not a threat. They were warning, knowledge he had carried too long. Outside, the wind shifted through dry grass, rustling shutters, whispering through the broken boards of the barn. The widow swallowed hard, feeling the weight of everything pressing in. Gunfire cracked from the edge of the property, deliberate, missing by design. She pressed Eli closer, instincts raw. The sheriff did not flinch. He removed his badge from his coat and laid it on the table, old metal dull in the morning light. "They'll come for him," he said. "And you." She nodded, breathing uneven. "I already know," she said. The sheriff looked at her, eyes heavy. "You're strong," he said. "But not invisible." The baby cooed softly, tiny fists pressing against her chest. She rocked him slightly, whispering his name. The sheriff sighed, older than time itself, and walked toward the door. He paused, hand on the frame. Stay alive. That's all you can do. Outside, the wind carried the distant sound of men gathering, calculating, planning. The land waited, patient, keeping record. She held Eli tighter. We survived together, she whispered. He blinked up at her, small mouth opening in a soft yawn. The sheriff left the badge behind. On the table, it gleamed faintly in the early light, a symbol stripped of authority, stripped of protection. She felt the weight of it, heavy with warning, heavy with surrender. Outside, shadows moved, distant and deliberate. She pressed Eli against her shoulder, feeling the tiny pulse of life beneath her hand. Gunfire had been a promise, not an attack. The world outside was dangerous, patient, inevitable. But inside, she held what mattered. For now, Eli was safe. The midwife appeared at the doorway, silent. She nodded at the badge. No words. Understanding passed between them, unspoken but complete. The land kept its secrets. Men carried their threats. And yet, for a moment, the house felt theirs. The wind shifted again, carrying dust and whispers across the porch. She looked down at Eli, small, alive, breathing. His tiny fingers brushed hers. They'll come, she whispered. But we'll be ready. He cooed softly. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. The sheriff's footsteps faded. The badge lay on the table, abandoned, meaningless. Outside, the world moved toward them, slow, dangerous, patient. Inside, she held life in her arms. The land remembered. The baby cooed again. She breathed in, steadying herself, rocking Eli gently. We survive, she said, voice low, iron strong. He slept briefly against her chest, fragile and unknowing. The gunfire had ended for now. The world outside had paused, but it would not stop. The widow tightened her grip. The sheriff had left. The badge lay on the table. The baby pressed to her shoulder. And for the first time in long hours, she allowed herself a thought, maybe, just maybe, they could make it. Men surrounded the house before the sun had fully risen. Dust and shadows pressed against the walls, horses shifting, eyes calculating. Hand him over, one of them called, voice hard, impatient. The widow stood in the doorway, Eli pressed to her chest. No, she said, tone flat, unshakable. The first man stepped forward, gun raised. You're crazy, he said, voice sharp, daring her to flinch. She did not. I'm finished, she said, calm, deliberate. Her hand moved toward the barn. A single match struck, flame catching dry wood instantly. Smoke spiraled, dark and thick. Horses reared. Men shouted. She did not move. Eli stirred, tiny fists pressing against her chest, but he did not cry. The fire reflected in the well, orange and black dancing across the surface. She pressed his head to her shoulder. Remember us, she whispered, voice low, steady. Smoke choked the morning. Sparks flew, carried by wind, scattering across the dry land. Men tried to push forward, but the fire made a line they could not cross. Shouts turned to curses, commands drowned in chaos. She stood firm, eyes sharp, every breath measured. Eli breathed softly, unaware of the strategy, unaware of the danger, trusting her entirely. The governor's son appeared at the edge of the property, gun shaking in his hands. His polished suit was out of place against the smoke and dust. He stopped, uncertain, calculating, eyes on the baby. The fire reflected in his pupils. Hand him over, he said again, voice shaky now. She stepped closer, shielding Eli, chest pressed against his small back. No, she repeated, tone iron strong. The fire consumed the barn, a roaring line between them. Sparks and smoke rose, black ribbons cutting the air. The wind carried ash across the dry ground, swirling it into the men's faces. They coughed, stumbled, hesitated. Her heart pounded, but she did not flinch. Eli cooed softly, tiny hands brushing her chin. She kissed his head, whispering his name. Stay close, she said. Stay alive. We're not giving them what they want. The governor's son's gun hand trembled. He took a step forward, then another, shadows and smoke playing over him. The fire was a promise, a barrier, a line she had drawn. Men at the edges shifted, unsure. The well reflected the flames, water dark and alive, black and orange flickering together. She glanced down at it, then back to Eli. "This is ours," she whispered. "All of it. You and me." He pressed his head against her shoulder, tiny breaths warm and steady. The governor's son froze, weighing the flames, the distance, the risk. Dust and smoke clung to him. His gun shook in his hand. He did not fire. He did not move forward. For the first time, hesitation held him in place. She could see the calculation behind his eyes. They counted power, danger, risk. She counted only Eli, alive in her arms. The barn burned hotter, the flames climbing, consuming dry boards and stored hay. Sparks floated across the yard, settling on dirt, on grass, on men's boots. She stood firm, rocking Eli gently. Smoke stung her eyes, but she did not blink. She did not move. Wind carried the smell of smoke, of charred wood, of fire and threat. Men murmured, muttered, shouted, but they stayed back. The governor's son's gun lowered slightly. His lips pressed into a thin line. The fire had drawn the line she could not have held with words or strength alone. She pressed Eli close, small fingers curling around hers. "Remember us," she whispered again, voice soft, firm. The fire was not just wood and flame. It was warning, promise, declaration. They could not cross this line. Not today. Not here. Not while she held him. The smoke climbed higher, thick and dark, reflecting in the well's water. The house trembled with heat, the ground hummed under the weight of wind and fire. She breathed in, steadying herself, rocking Eli slowly. His small face pressed to her shoulder. He did not cry. He did not know fear. She stepped back, letting the fire define the boundary, letting the ash and smoke draw men back. The governor's son's gun hand lowered further. His eyes met hers. Challenge, calculation, threat, hesitation, all in one glance. She held Eli firmer. He cooed softly. The land, the well, the fire, they all bore witness. She whispered his name again, rocking slowly. The barn burned. The line was drawn. The governor's son stepped forward, gun shaking, but did not cross it yet. Smoke rose, orange and black and alive, carrying her warning across the dry land. The widow held the note open, Eli pressed to her chest, small fingers curling around hers. She read the words aloud, voice low but steady, carrying over the dry wind and the lingering smoke. Names, dates, crimes, each syllable sharp, deliberate. Every accusation, every hidden truth, left no room for doubt. "They thought they could hide this," she said, eyes hard, scanning the horizon. "That's a lie," a voice called from the shadows. The governor's son stepped closer, hands trembling, gun lowered but still in reach. "Then why are you scared?" she shot back, tone unyielding. His eyes flicked to Eli, who pressed his tiny face against her shoulder, fingers brushing her cheek. The baby cooed softly, oblivious to the danger, alive and innocent. Wind rose across the dry fields, scattering ash and dust. Men backed away slightly, uncertainty cracking their authority. The note trembled in her hands, edges frayed from handling, soaked from the well, alive with proof. The widow's voice rose slightly, carrying over the dust and heat. "You thought silence made you safe. It didn't. It never did. This child, this life, is the record of everything you hid." Eli's small hands pressed against her chest, warm and steady. She pressed her cheek to his head. "You hear that?" she whispered to him. "It's ours now. We decide." The men shuffled, unsure, wary of fire, wind, and the words she wielded like steel. The governor's son swallowed, fingers tightening on his gun. The wind tossed ash into his eyes, and he blinked against it, unprepared for her defiance. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked, voice low but cutting. Names spoken aloud had power. Dates, crimes, inheritance, all laid bare. Men who had counted on fear now counted the weight of truth. The widow's chest rose and fell with Eli's gentle breaths. "This land doesn't forget." "And neither will we," she said, voice steady, final. The governor's son's gun hand lowered further. He hesitated, eyes flicking between her face and the baby. His polished veneer cracked, revealing the fear he had masked with threats and authority. Wind lifted dust around his boots. Men shifted behind him, unsure. The line she had drawn with fire and courage held them at bay. Eli's coups grew louder, a small, living defiance against the tension pressing down on the land. The widow smiled faintly, tired but unbroken. "This child carries their truth," she whispered, pressing him closer. "Every secret. Every lie. Every hidden sin. They can't erase it. Not now. Not ever." A deep, tense silence stretched across the dirt road and scorched fields. Men moved back, uncertainty spreading like smoke. The governor's son finally lowered his gun completely, shoulders tight, eyes unwilling to meet hers. Dust swirled between them, carrying ash and wind like witnesses. The power they had relied on in the threats, the authority, the fear, was gone, replaced by a raw, undeniable truth. The widow held Eli up slightly, showing him to the men. Small hands open, eyes bright. He looked alive, unbroken, untouchable in her arms. "See him?" she asked. "This is proof. You can't claim him. You can't erase him. You can't claim what he carries." The men shifted again, hesitant, unsure, the weight of the note pressing heavier than their guns. Wind picked up, whistling through the scorched fields and the burned barn. The men stepped back further, instinctively, like the land itself rejected their claim. The governor's son's face tightened, jaw firm, calculating the next move. But he did not step forward. His gun remained low. Ash clung to his boots. The widow held Eli closer, steady, unflinching. The baby's coo turned into a soft laugh, small and clear, cutting through tension like light. The wind rose, stronger, carrying sound across the dry land. Men froze, shifting uneasily. The sound was alive, small, powerful. It belonged to no one but her. She smiled faintly, pressing his tiny head to her shoulder. The governor's son's gun hand fell completely. His eyes met hers once, hesitation and fear clear. Around him, the men slowed, backing away further, uncertain, unable to claim what they had no right to touch. The widow shifted, holding Eli between them and the crowd, a human shield and proof all at once. She read the note again, quietly, to herself, eyes tracing the names, dates, crimes. The wind carried her voice softly to the men at the edges. The baby's laughter rose again, small, defiant, alive. The governor's son dropped his gaze, gun gone, powerless. The crowd recoiled instinctively, uncertainty making them pliable, distant. The widow stepped forward, heels firm in the dirt, chest steady, holding Eli high, small hands gripping hers. "This is ours," she said, voice low but unwavering. "And you will remember it." Wind lifted around her, dust and ash circling. Men shifted back further. Power had collapsed, replaced by truth. The child had leveled the field. Eli cooed softly, the sound rising above the dry wind, proof of life and inheritance. The governor's son remained frozen, gun gone, authority broken. The widow pressed the baby to her chest, rocking him gently. She stepped between him and the men, body solid, unyielding. The land held them in place. The note lay wet and worn in her pocket, history and evidence folded close. The crowd finally slowed, uncertainty settling over them like dust. They had no claim here, no leverage, no way to undo the truth. The governor's son lowered his head, shoulders heavy, defeated. The widow held Eli tighter. His soft laugh continued, small and alive, proof of what could not be erased. She looked out at the men, then down at the baby, small, breathing, perfect in her arms. "This is ours," she whispered. The wind lifted, carrying the sound, carrying the dust, carrying the living proof across the dry land. The note, the child, the land itself, remembered everything. Morning came slow, gray light filtering through the scorched windows. Ash lay thick over the porch, over the barn, over the dust and footprints of the night. Silence pressed against the house. The widow held Eli close, rocking him gently. His small body rose and fell with hers, steady, fragile, alive. The midwife returned, dust on her boots, shadowed by the early sun. "You staying?" she asked, voice low, careful. The widow nodded, holding Eli tighter. "Yes," she said. The baby cooed softly, tiny fists brushing her chest. She pressed him to her shoulder, breathing in the warmth, the life, the proof of survival. They moved together to the well. The widow lowered the sheriff's badge slowly into the black water. It sank, silent, leaving a ripple that faded into nothing. The land held the memory, patient and unyielding. She pressed her hand against the stone edge, fingers trembling slightly, feeling the pulse of history beneath her skin. Eli stirred, small fingers opening and closing, eyes blinking sleepily. "They'll remember you wrong," the midwife said, voice soft, but certain. "That doesn't matter," the widow replied, pressing a kiss to his head. "We survived. That's what matters." She adjusted the blanket around him, gentle, careful. His breath rose and fell, slow and steady. The house smelled of ash, dust, milk, and quiet. Outside, the land stretched wide, empty but alive, patient. The sun lifted higher, scattering shadows across the dry fields, over scorched wood, over the well that remembered everything. The air was still, holding the echo of the fires, the cries, the laughter, the threats, the victories. She settled into the chair by the window, rocking Eli. His eyes fluttered closed. The widow's hands traced small circles on his back, steady, calming. She breathed with him, in and out, feeling life where there had been only fear. The midwife stood nearby, silent but present, watching the rhythm, the bond, the quiet defiance of survival. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, carrying whispers of the past, of names and debts, of fires burned and promises kept. The house creaked, old boards sighing, the well dark and patient, holding all that had come before. She looked down at Eli, sleeping softly, fragile and alive. "You are ours," she whispered. The ash from the fires settled in layers across the yard. Footprints remained, but no one followed them. The threats lingered only as echoes. The badge lay at the bottom of the well, powerless, submerged. Life remained in her arms, small, breathing, and unaware of the battles waged for it. She pressed her cheek against Eli's head. The midwife moved to the door, pausing. "They'll remember," she said, faintly. "But not today. Not this day." The widow nodded, feeling the weight of history press lightly against her chest. She kissed the baby again, careful, soft, a promise without words. The land held its silence. The well held its secrets. The house held its survivors. The wind whispered across the empty fields, brushing dust into the air, carrying warmth and memory and life across the quiet land. The baby's chest rose and fell, steady, proof of what remained. The widow leaned back, rocking gently, watching the soft curve of Eli's small face. The world outside could wait. The land could hold its echoes. She pressed her hand to the note tucked safely in her coat. It had carried them this far. It would carry them farther. And in that stillness, with ash beneath her feet, wind on her face, and the baby safe against her chest, the widow finally allowed herself a measure of peace. Nothing was over. Nothing was certain. But life remained. Eli slept. The house stood. The well waited. The land remembered. The wind moved, gentle now, holding everything quietly, completely, and faithfully. The morning was still. Ash drifted across the yard, coating the dry grass, settling in the cracks of the porch, across the blackened barn. The widow sat in the doorway, Eli sleeping in her arms, the note folded in her coat pocket. The air smelled of smoke, dust, and survival. The midwife leaned against the frame, shadowed by the pale sun. "You can't hide forever," she said. "They'll come back." The widow shifted Eli, small fists curling against her chest. "Then we wait," she said. "And we watch. And we survive." From the distance, dust swirled along the road. A horse's hoofbeat echoed faintly. She stiffened, pressing Eli closer, eyes scanning the horizon. Shadows moved just beyond sight, patient and calculating. They remember, she whispered. And so do we. Eli stirred, blinking against the sunlight. Tiny fingers brushed her chin. You hear that? She murmured. Life doesn't wait for fear. She stood slowly, holding him up, letting the sun fall across his face. He cooed softly, bright-eyed, unaware of danger, unaware of the history that clung to him like a shadow. The midwife reached into her coat, pulling out a small bundle. You'll need this, she said. For the roads. For the nights. The widow took it, feeling the weight of it, heavy with necessity. We go when we have to, she said. Not before.